As I have said, this meeting will be recorded and it will be accessible on the platform of the teacher task force. Interpretation will be provided in Arabic and in English. Participants can listen to the Arabic language using the French channel. This is one of the virtual meetings following the Oslo Declaration, which called upon the nations to promote the status of teachers. The aim is to promote awareness about the need to train and hone the skills of teachers. Saudi Arabia is honored in chairing the meeting, and this is being done in cooperation with the Doha and Beirut offices. This meeting is entitled Regional Virtual Meetings for the Arab States COVID-19 Education Crisis, Supporting Teachers in Remote Learning and on School Reopening. We shall focus on training and retraining. Actually, countries have closed their schools and now they are preparing to open schools again. This meeting is an opportunity to engage in a dialogue in order to shed light on the challenges and opportunities. Our meeting is being convened in response to the TTF request, and this within the framework of our support to the teaching profession. Mrs. Gerd Hans will be with us. She will submit a presentation in addition to a number of other presentations related to this issue and which would shed light on the challenges and the various measures that are needed to open schools again. It will be an input so that we can set up the most appropriate strategies. We should like to thank those who will be submitting their presentations, and the floor will be open to submit questions. As I said, Mrs. Gerd Hassan will be with us from the Norway Research Center, Mr. Abdelaziz Al-Midbel, who is the Director General of the Regional Center for Education in Saudi Arabia, Mrs. Tassama Salah, Resource Center Manager, the Center for Educational Research and Development, Mrs. Hessa Rashid, and Mrs. Samira from Morocco, Mr. Rifat Sabah, the President of the Global Campaign for Education, Director and Founder of Future Creativity Center, and Mrs. Dakmara Georgescu, Program Specialist from the UNESCO Bureau in Beirut. I am honored to give the floor to Mrs. Hunt, who is the chairperson of the Research Center from Norway. Please submit your presentation within 10 minutes, and the other speakers will be given 5 minutes only, because we shall close our meeting at 3:30 European time. You have 10 minutes, Mrs. Gerd Han Fosen. You have the floor, madam.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Dr. Abdulrahman Al-Madaris. It's an honor for me to represent the Teacher Task Force in this virtual meeting. This is a series of meetings. So the meeting for the Arab region is the fifth in a series that started in Caribbean, and then when there was a meeting in Latin America, and then Southeast Asia or Asia, the Asia Pacific region, and then for the Anglophone Africa, and tomorrow there will be Francophone Africa. So this is next to the last in a series of regional meetings. There are four objectives for this meeting. It's to share experiences across the Arab region, also to identify priorities, similarities, and perhaps common challenges on teacher issues facing this COVID-19 crisis. I'll also share with you the call of action on teachers that's been developed by the Teacher Task Force, as well as a policy brief on school reopening. And I'll present also some activities by the TTF over the last few weeks. So let me just start in general, for those of you who are not so familiar with the Teacher Task Force, a little information about the task force. Currently, we have 140 organizations and countries as part of a membership in the task force. The membership includes UN organizations, teacher unions, countries, civil society organizations, foundations, private foundations, and it's a network that focuses on three result areas or three main lines of actions. And this is taken from our current strategy for the Teacher Task Force. The first that you see in this slide is advocacy. We want to advocate for the critical role of teachers for reaching SDG 4. We know that without teachers, education is very difficult. We've seen that even more so now with COVID-19, that we really need the teachers. Technology is great and can take us quite far where technology is available, but teachers are still key and central to delivering and facilitating good education. Also, knowledge creation is important. And when the task force was first created back in 2008, sharing knowledge and creating knowledge was important. More and more, we see that a lot of knowledge is being created, but we need to be able to access it and have easy ways of sharing and accessing available knowledge about teaching and the teaching profession, policy choices, and how to develop policies in the best way possible. Also, we want to engage with countries and support countries. Now, below the dotted line, I hope you can all see the slides. Below the dotted line, you see that there are also three flagship initiatives. The first flagship initiative is the Policy Dialogue Forum. And hello to all of you whom I met in Dubai last December when we had the last Policy Dialogue Forum in Dubai, hosted by the United Arab Emirates. That is linked to advocacy. It's a great place where we can discuss how to best advocate for teachers on the global agenda. But it's also a place for knowledge sharing, and it's a place, hopefully, where countries perceive that they get the support from each other and from the task force and from the Secretariat when you are in that Policy Dialogue Forum. The second initiative, and perhaps we can move to the next slide, the second flagship initiative is the knowledge platform. You can now access that online. You go into the Teacher Task Force website and there's a knowledge hub. There's also a separate space where you can become a member, a locked working space, where you can exchange and share experiences and practices. And then we have the Teacher Development Guide. That is particularly relevant for countries and for the support to countries. It's designed with different elements in order to develop comprehensive teacher policies. Now, if we move forward to the COVID-19 era and what we have done, right away when we understood, or when schools were closing, we started thinking about teachers and what would happen to teachers in this very difficult situation. We knew that some teachers would be teaching online. We knew that some places teachers were being supported, but we also knew that in some areas, in some countries, in remote areas, there would be hard times. Also now, as we look forward and we are getting some of the estimates on what will happen to the economy, we recognize that there will be pressure both on national budgets on family economies, and perhaps also on aid budgets. So all this we had in mind when we developed a call for action on teachers. It has 6 points, and I just want to go through them briefly. So the first point is preserve employment and wages. This is related to the point about national budgets and other budgets being under pressure. We have heard stories of teachers losing their jobs, or teachers working under very difficult circumstances in this situation. And we believe that a crisis should not be a pretext for lowering standards and norms or to push aside labor rights. We also feel like it's important to prioritize teachers and learners' health, safety, and well-being. So we have a point about that. And then on this slide, the third point is to include teachers in developing COVID-19 education responses. We think it's important, of course, that teachers are consulted when governments make decisions or in the decision-making process before decisions are made about what to do. In terms of closing schools, that was, of course, a decision made primarily because of health reasons. But now we're also moving towards reopening of schools in many countries. And in that setting, it will be important to include and consult and get the sort of input and advice from teachers about how it's possible to perhaps reopen schools wholly or partially with the social distancing or other measures that also need to be in place. Point 3 in our call for action, which is there on the next slide, is to provide adequate professional support for teachers. This is related both to the health and safety situation, that teachers need to feel like they're getting the professional support they need, also in terms of having to move education online and teaching from home. Of course, there are areas here and there is skills that teachers don't necessarily have, but that they now need support and training to be able to continue educating and doing education from home. We also have focused on equity. We see that there are that this kind of situation will create larger differences, and we'll get back to that a little bit. And then also we think it's important to include teachers in aid responses. So when we talk about aid to education, that teachers is always an integral part of that, an explicit part of that. And this is also then linked to aid packages. So for instance, when different organizations are providing large aid packages, to what extent are they then also discussing teachers and, for instance, teachers' salaries as part of those packages? Now, dealing with this, and when we started having exchange with teachers and teacher organizations and Education International, it of course becomes clear that the digital divide is emphasized in a crisis like this. I just read some research the other day that apparently around 500 million children have received no teaching and no education in this period of school closures. So while in some countries we have been able to move education mostly online, and a lot of children are still learning from home with the support from their teachers through virtual means, that has not been the case in a lot of places. So UNESCO also with
1 minute left, please.
Thank you. With the support from and together with the TTF has worked on analyzing that and developing strategies both for getting more schools online, for providing support, and for seeing how education can be done both with high tech, low tech, and no tech. Let me just also mention that the TTF has developed a guide for policymakers on reopening schools. And linked to that, we are now in the process of developing a toolkit that will be more practical. And in the next slide, you will see that it has 7 areas. It focuses on safety and health, teacher psychological and social emotional well-being, teacher preparation and learning, teacher deployment, rights and working conditions, financial resources and investments, monitoring and evaluation, and the importance of social dialogue and communication. This will be released, I believe, next week or the week after. It is being developed. And for each of these topics, there will be some guiding questions, there will be some tips, and there will be some best practices and further resources. Now, let's just do the last slide, which is very relevant for this meeting, because in the different regional meetings, we want to focus on thematic priorities and hear from you what the thematic priorities for the Arab States region is. And we're hoping that this can be done also in a way so we can create more knowledge, we can share, and you can all draw from each other and support each other also in this meeting, and have a dialogue about best policies for moving forward in the face of COVID-19, also as schools start planning their reopening. Thank you very much.
شكرا لك قد هانا على العرض المميز.
Thank you very much indeed for this outstanding presentation, in which you have shed light on the critical importance of the role of the teacher, the profession of teaching. Indeed, the teacher is the first engineer in the education architecture and structure. Thank you very much for the efforts and the input given by the TTF. Thank you to you, Anna, for this valuable presentation. I would like to say that interpretation is available in Arabic and English. And in case you have any question, please submit your questions on the screen where you see Q&A. Now, we will try to focus on the fears of teachers and their concerns. How best can we support them? Indeed, many countries have had outstanding contribution in this field. Amongst these countries, Saudi Arabia had a leading role in this field. We have field experiences, and we have produced a great deal of resources when it comes to education. Mr. Abdel Rahim Al-Muqbil, who is from Saudi Arabia, he will give us his presentation about the ways and means of dealing with education and its challenges in Saudi Arabia. You have 5 minutes, Dr. Muhammad.
Thank you very much indeed, and I would like to thank the TTF, and I would like to welcome all the colleagues and the participants participating in this virtual meeting. I believe that today we have such an excellent opportunity to share experience. As for the KSA efforts, even before the pandemic, and it started in China and KSA, we have put forward the first strategic plan on the 1st of February. This plan intended to prepare several scenarios for the pandemic. After the 1st of February, we started working on different foundations and pillars. How would the virtual school look? How will be the children learning virtually? How can students deal with this new virtual learning? And how will the teachers also deal with this new way of teaching? And the last pillar was the parents as well. So we had 5 main pillars in our planning. After we elaborated those plans, we started studying the reality. We had several options to deal with the pandemic, and I mean educational options. First of all, we worked on the curricula and what we called the intensive content of curricula, because we know that the conventional curricula differ than the virtual ones. After we elaborated those intensified curricula based on the basic knowledge and skills, we also developed what we called the enriching or helping learning tools. We had to replace some parts of those curricula that needed physical presence of the students, and they were replaced by virtual participation. After we prepared those curricula, we moved to the exploration of how can the ministry provide 6 options for students and the parents how to deal with this pandemic. First of all, we had a portal called the Portal of the Future. It was a portal dedicated to the intermediary and secondary phases of education. We had also what we called the Unified Education Portal. On another aspect, we had also what we called the virtual kindergarten. We also had a platform called the Ain Enriching platform that had this enriching content in addition to some classes that were prepared by the teachers, giving the pupils the possibility to log in and have access to several parts of the contents, including even self-evaluation and tests. Students who have participated in those platforms amounted to 1,800,000 students. We had 290,000 students who participated and 11,000 educational supervisors. 85% of the schools actually participated in those plans. We had 4 open-ended platforms. There were satellite channels that were used before the pandemic. The KSA has broadcasted long hours of classes through the satellite channels, through 14 channels. The minister has given the instructions to increase those channels into 20 channels so that there will be specialized satellite channels that would be broadcasting the classes as if children were in the normal schools. Dr. Muhammad, we have the YouTube channels that were viewed by 70 million persons on YouTube and the other channels as well. I would like to speak about something extremely important, which is the parents' culture in terms of self-education and the supervision by the parents. I have to indicate that in certain cases, we didn't have enough devices. However, the ministry had to provide the necessary equipment for the broadcasting. We gave devices to those children who didn't have the necessary devices for e-learning or online learning. We have trained a lot of teachers to use those platforms. The question is, what are we going to do in the next phase? We have several scenarios for next year, and we have alternative studies for the students, and now there are we are participating in the evaluation for this scholastic year. However, for next year, we are embarking on the preparation of several scenarios to provide the educational service if, God forbid, the pandemic will still continue. And there will be indeed ready alternatives before we start the next scholastic year. And we are going to conduct tests, I would say diagnostic tests, so that we would be ready at the beginning of the next scholastic year. Thank you very much indeed. It is a very important experience, and I believe that in this regional virtual meeting for the Arab states, it is very important for us to know what we are preparing and how would the preparation vary from one country to another. Dr. Mohammed, I believe that these experiences should be documented, and this meeting is not just a meeting to increase our knowledge in this domain. However, it is important to share the experiences in a very highly professional manner. Thank you for the Dr. Mohammed, and now I'll give the floor to Madam Tassama Saleh from the Resource Center. She's the Resource Center Manager for the Center for Educational Research and Development. I would remind you that there is interpretation into both Arabic and English languages, and you can use the chat box to chat, and also the Q&A to send your questions. Mrs. Tassama, you have 5 minutes. Thank you, Dr. Abdel Rahman. I represent the Center for Educational Research and Development in Lebanon. Peace be upon you, and thank you for the invitation to participate in this virtual meeting. And I would like to speak about the best practices and also the supporting teachers in distance learning and school reopening. We had to prepare a plan, and therefore our center and especially the emergency team has met in order to discuss many of the challenges that we had, and we have launched the platform on digital learning that is one of the unique platforms in Lebanon. as it is clear in front of you, this platform has several services that help the teachers and the parents. For example, there is the digital library that had more than 3,000 classes that were all put in the network for many classes as well as educational levels, so that the students would use it as well as the teaching staff in order for everybody to have access to the virtual classes. Also, there are possibilities to have access to the and the interpreter has a note here. The speaker's voice is being interrupted, you know, and it's coming back again. So this will definitely affect the interpretation. Back to the interpretation. Through this platform, we provide also the guidelines to the teachers. Of course, there is a number of teachers and learners who do not have the internet connection at all, or they have a weak internet connection. And therefore, taking into consideration this issue, our center has broadcast 350 TV classes over 41 days and over 10 weeks of TV broadcasting through a TV channel that was accessible to everybody. We also discussed several scenarios regarding how we can complete the scholastic year, as well as the beginning of next scholastic year. We had several scenarios. What if we have to conclude the scholastic year now? What about next scholastic year? What will happen? Next slide. We understood that ad campaigns were very important to increase people's awareness. And you may notice that there are several groups of such ad campaigns. One category regarding the our health safety. How can we use our time at home? And the third category is how we have to change our way of thinking during the pandemic, how we have to curb the negative thinking, and how can we be positive. Therefore, we had a number of awareness campaigns, including giving advice on the precautions that we have to take and the sanitation and health precautions and other precautions that we have to take during this period. In addition to supporting teachers and learners, the center gave due attention to parents' psychological health, and therefore we have produced a number of studies and campaigns and films, videos. We prepared more than 10 videos that were uploaded on the center's website. And we agreed that if students would go back to school, we have to give due attention to the psychological health of students and teachers during the first 2 weeks, whether they come back after the end of the pandemic or now or whenever. You have just 1 minute left. And we also prepared activities to be used in class. There are many challenges. How would we reopen schools fully, partially, or gradually? Another challenge is that many learners and teachers do not have the necessary electronic devices. And some of the teachers felt that they didn't have the necessary skills, and this has led to exhaustion among the teachers. Some of them don't really have reliable knowledge of internet and IT knowledge, and we haven't also made enough surveys to understand to what extent the teachers are comfortable with distance learning. The other thing is that how can we train teachers, learners, and parents? And the recommendations, Dr. Abdurrahman, we have a number of recommendations. First of all, I'll start with the second point, which is we have to understand the reality, and and this should be done through surveys that would be really to the point, and then elaborate a framework and a policy for the distance learning and the engagement of the educational community, teachers, engaging the teachers in planning distance learning, and the establishment of a support unit to teachers, and also giving the institutional support, and I refer here to the CERD. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your presentation.
ركزتي على قضية دعم المعلمين في مناطق ذات اتصال انترنت سواء كان ضعيف أو معدوم، وأيضا أعجبت الحقيقة اللي وضعتيه كعنوان غير طريقة تفكيرك في زمن كوفيد 19. بالفعل نحن بحاجة إلى نتغير في هذا الزمن أكثر، ونكون أكثر تفاؤلا في ظل هذه التحديات الموجودة. التركيز على التفكير الحقيقة الإيجابي والتركيز على الصحة النفسية والدعم الاجتماعي مطلب الحقيقة لتحسين جودة التعليم.
Thank you very much indeed for this presentation. And now I give the floor to Ms. Hissa Al-Rashid, who is the cluster manager in the Ministry of Education. You have 5 minutes. Madam Hissa, go ahead. It is your turn.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بداية أول شيء الصوت واضح. طبعا يشرفني.
Good afternoon. I am honored to join a throng of education experts. I'm looking forward to benefit from experiences with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. In the United Arab Emirates, we are very well supported by the leadership. We, in the Ministry of Education, have deemed necessary to carry on with our job, and we have achieved great success in remote learning. So, with regard to the UAE experience, I have focused on 3 main elements, stressing the role of teachers. What tools have we provided to teachers, and how we have overcome all digital challenges. With regard to the training aspect, we have 3 phases. The first one is a pre-crisis preparedness phase. Thank God, since 2012, and prior to that, we were so forward-looking as we have implemented Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, the Smart Learning. This program was put into practice in 2012, and now smart education is in force in the UAE. This has helped us achieve success in the crisis we are facing now. Furthermore, I have actually a slide about the pandemic, and which deals with the training of teachers in this time of crisis. We have also the follow-up and impact assessment of subjects taught by teachers, and also we focus on the feedback of teachers after the training they get. This is carried out through questionnaires. We have focused in this slide on training and qualification. We have 5 types of training before implementing remote learning. Firstly, we have partnership with stakeholders. The Ministry of Education has partnered with the Hamdan Smart University in order to teach and train teachers in the UAE and in the Arab world also. We have also specialized training. On the 23rd of March, we implemented remote education, but prior to that, we have qualified teachers to the digital skills. We focus on public and private schools, and we have trained 25,300 from government schools and 9,330 teachers in private schools. Every week we have a training through the learning communities. We have provided to 24,723 courses in government schools. We focus also on the planning and implementation of learning, remote learning. We have provided the training for a big number of teachers. We have provided training for 50,000 training. And we have also focused on the psychological aspects. On Saturdays, we train teachers to prosperity, quality of life, and so far, 92,000 teachers have attended these training courses. We have also guides and digital library that comprises recorded and TV classes from preschool to grade 12. Next slide, please. This is a slide that shows examples of the platforms we have provided and what solutions we have made available to teachers. As far as distance education is concerned. So the platform provides an avenue for teachers to meet students. They interact, and of course, we have also a platform that is dedicated to the assessment of remote education. And of course, we have samples of exams that are offered through these platforms. We also have provided global platforms such as McGraw-Hill, Twig, and so on and so forth. Moreover, the third aspect I would like to allude to has to do with the digital enablers. We have provided tools to teachers in the remote areas through satellite connections. We also have noticed that some new teachers did not have the devices. We have made sure to make these devices available to them. And we have also increased the connectivity to the internet in these remote areas. We have also a hotline that teachers can use to reach out to students. And the hotline is available throughout the country, and in each school we have facilitators who assist students and teachers in overcoming their problems. I am about to just conclude. But let me just say that we need more studies in order to take the appropriate decisions based on health considerations. I'm sorry for taking too much of your time. Ms. Hassa, thank you so much for your paper. Absolutely what you have just said is very important as far as education is concerned. Thank you for focusing on follow-up and impact assessment. This is very important. And of course, what is important also is preparedness of the teachers before providing online education. And you have also focused on preschool and the various grades that students use online education in. And of course, we will have remote students more and more in the future. Thank you so much, Ms. Hissa, for your excellent paper. Now we move to the fourth speaker, Ms. Samira Tikedi. She's a supervisor, VLT in Morocco. Samira, you have 5 minutes. Please go ahead. Thank you, Dr. Abdulrahman.
So, thank you so much. I would like to thank الفريق الدولي للمعلمين وكذلك الفريق الإقليمي للجودة على هذه الدعوة وعلى فرصة تبادل الخبرات. بالنسبة لعرض سوف
participants and the organizers.
strategy or experience for ensuring education for all during the time of COVID. Okay, how to move to the next slide. There were certain measures taken by the Ministry of Education, which does not only include education, but there were at the level of security first, economic measures and social measures. I would like just to give an example. Since the confirmation of the first case, airports closed down, transport between cities was suspended, and there was an emergency fund which was created in order to provide support for the people, especially those working in informal sector. This is the context for creating better space for educational for all. Concerning education measures, the first thing which was done on March 16, the classes were cancelled for all the levels, and it was the ministry said that this is not a holiday. Like we have probably closed school, but we have moved behind screens. We have moved online to continue the education for all. So what are the spaces we have provided after the suspension of classes? The Ministry of Education provided a formal platform, which is Tilmitis, and all the students in Morocco have access to this through their Masar code. They could access the platform. We started with around 600 resources, digital resources or Mawrid Raqmi, which were created, but now we are up to 6,000. And this is thanks to the teachers and the efforts of everyone at the ministry, but also at the different directorates in Morocco. Concerning access of students, there was around 6,000 daily users that are using the platform. Because the platform was actually new, concerning higher education, they already have their e-learning platform, so there was no issue. Concerning the other levels, So there was no pressure for teachers to use the Microsoft Teams. They could use other tools and other platforms. What is important is the continuity. So to ensure equal opportunity, because for sure in some rural areas, the connection to the internet might not be 100% available. So the Moroccan Ministry of Education made use of like TV channels, around 6 TV channels provided daily lessons. Around 59 lessons were available for students daily. There was also an agreement between the Ministry of Education and publishing houses to print materials for those who cannot access those TV channels. Gradually, there was also content which was provided for preschool and kindergartens. This was not at the beginning, but gradually we provided it. We also provided content for children with disabilities. Later on, another TV channel provided physical education lessons and courses and orientation lessons for students. What is the gain? What is the gain for us as educators in Morocco, and what is the gain for the Ministry of Education? What we came to know is that we already have the expertise at the level of the Ministry of Education, yes, but we have expertise among teachers, and this was obvious, because what happened is teachers have become facilitators of learning of their own peers. We have those who are excellent skills in terms of ICT use, but we have those who may not have benefited for training, etc. So those teachers who have that expertise have become the facilitators of others learning by producing some materials, videos, etc. This is how to use Teams. This is how you can assess students online, in addition to what is officially provided by the ministry. There is a lot of collaboration among teachers in Morocco, and there is support both for each other and for the students, because obviously providing education is not enough. We also have to provide support for students to make sure they learn in the best conditions. What we have formal professional learning communities which are created at the level of directorate by each supervisor, but we have also teacher-initiated professional learning communities, and these professional learning communities where materials are shared, and there is what I can say an emerging teacher leadership in Morocco. So just evaluating the experience, there was an availability of e-learning platforms. There was prior investment of the Ministry of Education in infrastructure and ICT training. There's a lot of collaboration, as I said, among the teacher community. Teachers have created their own materials. Our challenges: access to the net in some remote areas. Do we all have smartphones? We need more to invest more in teacher training and assessment, attendance of some students. My recommendations is to invest more in teacher training in terms of ICT technology. This is inevitable for all of us in the future. We need to provide online textbooks. We need to think about blended learning. We need to think about autonomy of students and teachers. We need to focus on project-based learning and student-centered learning. We need to provide trainings in media literacy. Yes, students are using the internet, but in what way? We need to provide more teacher networks, and we need to invest in building teacher leadership. So have we made it? Yes, I think we have succeeded in Kasb Rihan. I think we have made it in terms of providing education, but we still have a lot to do as educators, as a Ministry of Education, and as teachers and educators in the Arab world. Thank you so much.
شكرا لك استاذه سميره ويعطيك العافيه على العرض المتميز.
Thank you, Ms. Samira, for this excellent paper in which you focus on the necessity to provide education for all, while you stressed on the security, social, and educational aspects. All of these factors help achieve success in this endeavor. and provide an environment that facilitates learning platforms that are flexible, can assist and providing also tools to assist teachers and students. I hope we will, through this virtual meeting, discuss our challenges in order to come up with opportunities through the gains we can make based on the experiences of the participants. Thank you very much, Ms. Samira. And now, I can say that the NGOs, the IGOs also play a major role. It is my pleasure now to invite Mr. Rafat Sabah, President of the Global Campaign for Education and Director and Founder of the Teacher Creativity Center, to take floor. He will discuss the teaching in the wake of the school closures in the Arab world due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Rafat is so passionate about teachers, and he is impatient to take the floor. You have 5 minutes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Abdul Rahman. My intervention is based on my activity as a as the civil society activist. I would like to thank all those who have made presentations. This is a clear indication that education ministries are playing a major role in this era. However, there are issues we have to tackle. In this presentation, I'll focus on 3 levels. We've seen how this crisis has been dealt with in the education field, and as far as teachers are concerned. The first phase had to do with the first phase had to do with a shock, meaning that in most countries, in most education ministries, there was a kind of confusion, a kind of fear, of anxiety, of lack of clarity. We felt that people and education ministries were afraid that the curriculum would not be completed by year end. That's why they were thinking about various ways to tackle this. Remote education, one tool that everyone focused on. And this has been implemented, of course. However, there was a kind of handicap that teachers faced due to the lack of technical skills among teachers, or the lack of technical infrastructure in Arab countries, as the crisis was really a surprise for everyone.
الشهادات اللي أخذت بالمراسلة أو بالتعليم المفتوح أو التعليم عن بعد أو التعليم الذاتي لم تعطى قيمة. لحد هذه اللحظة هناك قوانين في الدول لا تعترف بهذه الشهادات إلا إذا أثبت الطالب الجامعي أنه داوم وجها لوجه ما لا يقل عن 8 أشهر 6 أشهر 10 أشهر، يعني وبالتالي هناك خلل وفجأة انت بتيجي بتقول للناس عن التعلم عن بعد. فهذا ايضا كان جزء من التحديات، ولكن الناس قدرت تطلع بشكل سريع من الصدمه عبر بدايه محاوله التعامل ومعالجه بعض القضايا. على سبيل المثال في كثير من مؤسسات المجتمع المدني والوزارات اهتموا بقضيه البعد النفسي والاجتماعي، وبالتالي كان المتاح كان لهم هو الفيديوهات، المنشورات، التوعية، استخدمت وسائل وادوات التواصل الاجتماعي بشكل قوي ولكن بدون تنسيق، بمعنى لم يكن هناك تنسيق بين مجموع المؤسسات بما هو افضل، وبالتالي استفاده من خبرات بعضهم، وهذا اشكال كان واضح جدا انه في نوع كان من الاستعراض من قبل المؤسسات، بحيث انه كل مؤسسه تثبت حالها في هذه الجائحه، وبالتالي استخدمت كل منها بطريقتها مناسبا، وهذا خلق على فكره اشكاليه مع الوزاره، لانه الوزاره ايضا عندها برامجها وعندها رؤيتها والى اخره، وفي كثير من الوزارات هذا تداركت الامر وعملت اجتماعات ولقاءات مع مؤسسات المجتمع المدني، وهذا الوزارات انه الشراكه المجتمعيه مهمه، الشراكه مش انك انت تطلب للناس يساعدوك، الشراكه انهم يفهموا معنى الازمه، الشراكه انهم يكونوا جزء من الحل اذا كانوا حقيقه جزء من فهم الازمه، فاذا انت كوزاره وكمجتمع مدني فهمتوا معنى الازمه سهل جدا تكونوا جزء من الحل، وهذا كان في اشكال.
You want them to be part of the solution, then you have to involve them in seeking the solution. Thus, I believe that all these activities have not been coordinated. Social media, television, and other ways and means were not well coordinated. The second aspect is related to the CSOs. You can use their knowledge in order to develop the videos and the support material in a substantial way. What has been crystal clear during this crisis is the realization of the need to develop. As you may have noticed, ministries in some countries has had to assess the students on the basis of the previous semesters. And this led students to not to follow the distance learning because they have realized that the ministries would not take it into account in the final assessment of their performance. And I believe that we need to develop the mechanisms and the tools to acknowledge these tools. This should be done within the framework of a clear vision. We have to look into this aspect. We have to trust teachers. Ministries should have confidence in teachers. There should be further creative initiatives that should be promoted, and teachers are an asset to the ministries. These initiatives should be promoted because teachers have experiences. Thank you very much. Your presentation, Mr. Riffet, focused on basic elements, shock to be followed by learning, and the learning that is a prerequisite for the promotion of quality education. We have so far listened to many speakers. The majority of them were positive, and this is a good starting point. I believe that there is always a scope for better performance, and opting for positive thinking, we have to adopt the same attitude when it comes to the shocks, and to start with the shock of coronavirus. I believe without corona, we wouldn't have convened this meeting. And that is why we have to think outside the box. We have to think about this curse, which can be turned into a blessing. It's a blessing in disguise. We now ask you to submit your questions. There is the Q&A possibility of sending your questions. Thank you very much, dear speakers. Could you please, Mrs. Maram, give us the gist of your presentation? Thank you, Mr. Abdurrahman, for the sound chairmanship of this meeting. My thanks also go to the participants and those who have submitted their presentations. The questions so far are outstanding. There are many questions about the difficulties in securing quality education, particularly when it comes to remote areas and low-income communities. These are some of the questions, Doctor. Another question was put, how can we support teachers in assessing and evaluating the students through distance education? We have to take into consideration that some do lack the technical and technical expertise when it comes to using the digital tools. We would like to know what is the experience of the region in securing the safety of students and teachers alike when they opt for the opening of schools. Doctor, you have the floor. These are good questions. They reflect the outstanding participants. Mr. Muhammad Al-Muqbil would give us his response, and then we shall give each speaker 1.5 minutes. How can we assess students under the present circumstances? I believe that our experience and your experience can be summed up. Thank you. I did benefit from the presentations. As far as the questions are concerned, I shall try to reply quickly. Those communities, vulnerable or remote areas, we have in Saudi Arabia Takaful Foundation. This foundation lends the support to students who do lack the financial resources. First, it provides them with the hardware and the communication institutions in Saudi Arabia provides them with the connection. So far, the assessment of students has been done in a sound way. In the Ministry of Education, we have dedicated 10 experts who are following on a daily basis the international experiments. We deal with this issue at 2 levels. First, we have the teachers and students. We have the direct contact between the student and the teacher. We have the other type of contact, which would be the education loss or the knowledge loss. Those countries that opted for the fast rehabilitation. How can we assess the knowledge loss? How can we assess this? Indeed, this varies from one country to another. We have statistics in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates where the infrastructure is good. If you allow me, I need some few minutes more. We have centers that are set up in order to help students. They are responsible for helping students manage their education during this crisis. How can you describe the difficulties you have encountered? As far as the equipments are concerned and the internet, we have secured one computer to each computer from grade 9 to 12. Thank God. And thanks to the charity organizations and the ministry, we were able to provide computers to all students. However, in some new communities where the connectivity is weak, we strengthened the connectivity. This is a challenge. We know that it is a tremendous challenge, and we are facing problems when it comes to assessing the students. For mathematics, physics, Arabic, we will initiate the implementation of precautionary measures starting from next week. We were talking about the emotional and psychological support. You have raised an issue.
I believe that the steps that we are undertaking are just a reaction. However, we have to elaborate the plans for the future, how we solve issues related to the internet, for example. And we have agreed that there should be what we call the white listing. This is an agreement between the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Telecommunications, so that a learner shouldn't be paying money to have access to this online education. And of course, the situation is not rosy. However, we have other success stories. We have spoken about how can online education and instruction be a new reality. Therefore, we are working on improving the OT with UNESCO. How can curricula be developed so that we would have online learning and teaching of a curricula that needs the required training of teachers? Now we are training the trainers and training the teachers. As for the social and psychological support, in my presentation, I have dwelled on this matter. I don't really want to repeat it because of time constraint. Ms. Samira, thank you. regarding the quality of online teaching and the difficulties. One of the initiatives, the speaker is turning from Arabic into English, from Arabic into English, and it is extremely difficult to turn from one channel to another online. So I'm turning into Arabic.
That would be dispatched in rural areas. I also talked concerning providing support الرقم الأخضر, which is both for students and for teachers. But one point that I would like to stress is collaboration. There was a lot of collaboration between teachers and teacher educators and supervisors. So we have those networks already in place. Two things that I consider would be our next challenges are assessment and emotional well-being and of students and teachers. So assessment, we used to invest a lot in face-to-face learning assessment, but we need to invest in online assessment, and we have to be very creative. We have to think of alternative assessments, not only the usual way of doing it, like quizzes and tests, but also thinking about, and this is why I insisted on project-based learning. We should think about alternative assessment that includes portfolios and projects, etc.
يعطيك العافيه. سيد
Thank
رفعت
you.
عندك سيد رفعت عندك شيء تعليق بشكل سريع.
Thank you, Mr. Rifat. Your conclusion in brief. If not, Mrs. Maram, there are questions. Can you share some of the questions, please? One of the questions is about the difficulties and the opportunities to support teachers when the schools are reopened based on everything that was said on the pandemic. Mr. Rifat, I would like to give you the floor. When we elaborate the plans and when we reopen schools, how can we support the teacher in the reopening process? There are many questions about the social distancing, for example. If we have between 30 up to 60 students, these have to be divided among several classes and several teachers. And the health care, for example, and the health requisites for pupils and students. And there is a very important issue, which is money, funding. There are many countries that don't have enough funding, and this may affect the funding. How can ministries cater to the needs of the educational process in this pandemic? Primary stage
it's because
pupils,
they are
how do
finishing
we
at
evaluate them
3:30, so
in
we divided
the
it
framework
in 10
of online
minutes. But it's awful. The
teaching
sound
and
is very
learning?
bad this time.
Who would like to speak on this topic? May I? Dr. Abdurrahman,
like
would you give me
time.
the floor?
No.
I would like to give a chance to other speakers as well. How can we evaluate the performance of a pupil in primary school? Dr. Muhammad. People who have worked for a long years putting curricula know that, of course, the evaluation has to be taken care of when we prepare curricula. There is a set of skills that are very difficult to gauge. Sometimes the skills to write or other skills. In KSA, there is the public education and the private education, and some of the private schools have also worked on the platforms that we have developed. Of course, in primary stage, the parents, whether the mother or the father, should play a role in maybe interacting with the school. I know that some schools, in some schools, they had recourse to the videos taken, uploaded, and sent to the platforms. I believe that I would like also to engage Ms. Samira, because Ms. Samira had experience in primary schools. How can we evaluate the primary school? We cannot hear you. Mr. Rifat, would you like, Ms. Samira now. Quickly, please. Your question is on primary school. As I said, the challenge is that we have to find alternative assessment methods, and
we don't need to assess content all the time.
اوكي got it. سيد رفعت عندك تعليق؟ سيد رفعت
ممكن اعلق استاذ عبد الرحمن دكتور عبد الرحمن ممكن
دكتور عبد الرحمن, may I? Mr. Rifat, in my opinion, the assessment has a problem. We do not gauge or assess the skills. We need to assess how the student is using the knowledge he receives, especially in the primary stage. We should improve and develop the skill to imagine things. We do understand that a student, when he sits for a test, he may be happy, he may be sad, and this can change his overall performance in a test. I would like to give less than 1 minute to the panelists to come up with a conclusion. We said that this meeting has to be followed up after that. Ms. Hissa, would you give a summary? I would like to thank the COVID-19, because if it weren't for this crisis, we wouldn't have known what skills we have, what challenges we have, so that we can overcome. And as per Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, the people who thought that there wouldn't be a post-corona, he was definitely wrong, because we can improve our work post the pandemic. I would like to say that we have to know what is our perception of the learning process and the assessment that is part of the learning process. Was it really just and equitable to insist on evaluating the students within the framework of the pandemic crisis? On the other hand, we should engage teachers, and this is extremely important.
Think about collaboration, I would think about networking, and I would think about self-directed learning. We need to invest in self-directed learning. Thank you.
Thank you. سيد رفعت. سيد رفعت. دكتور محمد المقبل.
مهم جدا، انا اعتقد الان مهم جدا ان هو درس مستفاد. يجب حقيقه ان لا تمر هذه التجربه بدون ان يكون في رصد لهذا الموقف. في دروس مستفاده جيده يجب ان نستفيد منها. اهم شيء في الاستفاده هو كيف.
First of all, we need to know how to prepare ourselves for the following stage. If the pandemic persists, And during summer, we need to prepare ourselves for the coming stage, whether the pandemic persists or not, so that we continue providing the necessary services to education. In government policies, the governments should shed the light on many difficulties that the teachers have been facing. Really, we have to give due attention to the difficulties faced by the teachers. I would like to thank all the panelists. You were really great. You have spoken about a lot of issues and aspects within an hour and a half. I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Dakmara Georgescu, Program Specialist of UNESCO in Beirut. Would you like to speak? Mrs. Dakmara, you have 5 minutes, madam.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Shukran. So as it was said, it's been a great session, very rich. And on behalf of my colleagues from headquarters, Paris, but also from our regional office in Beirut and from Doha office, I would like to express my gratitude for this enriching discussion that is actually also helping us to frame better the situation in the region. As some of you know, some 2 weeks ago, we hosted a policy dialogue on school reopening in the Arab countries, and we'll publish the report soon, and we'll also share the video of that discussion. And many issues came up as well in that meeting that today have took prominence, like for instance, the switch from a more shock reaction to a more systemic, proactive strategy development, which is a challenge, but also an opportunity for the countries in our Arab region. Then I would mention the fact that this meeting showed again the importance of our international teacher task force in helping us shaping up the policy dialogue, providing exchanges, the platform for exchanges, for this meeting, even virtual meeting of specialists and friends in education. And I've been also in Dubai, so I recall many of our discussions last December. It looks like ages, yeah, like many years ago, but it's been just a few months in which time a lot happened. So just to say that, of course, countries are sharing similarities, but they are also different. And among the similarities, I think a lot was said about the fact that the crisis is actually a kind of blessing in disguise, and that we have to rely also on our expertise that teachers possess, but I would say also maybe look at our learners, the students, who are more experienced than probably adults in using ICTs and social media and so on. There are both gains and losses in this period. We have to take both into account in reopening the new school year. And we will also host in our region, probably in early July, a follow-up of this dialogue on school reopening and listen to experiences of other countries and experts to help us support the efforts countries made in this regard. And we don't know yet, a lot is open, as you all mentioned. We still deal with scenarios and ifs and buts, and we have to think what to do. So many thanks to the panelists, to the moderators, Dr. Abdelrahman Al-Medaires and our colleagues from Paris. Many thanks to the interpreters who did a great job despite these technical difficulties, and to the focal points and to the participants in this very interesting and very well organized discussion. So shukran and stay well.
شكرا. قبل أن نختم الحقيقة أشكر المتحدثين الرائعين اللي أتحفون اليوم، وأشكر الحقيقة المشاركين والمشاركات، وأشكر فريق العمل الدولي الحقيقة على جهودهم الرائعة الحقيقة في التركيز على مهنة التعليم والمعلمين. وأختم بثلاث كلمات: المعلم المعلم المعلم. هو مهندس الجودة الأول في المصنع التربوي. ختاما شكرا لكم مع دعائنا أن تنجلي هذه.
Teachers are extremely important for this process, and I would pray to God Allah to let us all be safe, and peace and blessings of Allah be with you. Peace and blessings be on you. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye from Dr. Muhammad. And now the interpreter will mute the microphone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the interpreters. Thanks, Dakmara.
Thank you all.
I'm sorry you didn't get much time. I'm sorry about that.
Excuse me, may I say something from on behalf of the interpreters?
Sure. Thank
you.
Oh,
sorry.
رجاء زيارة المنصة للتعرف على فريق العمل الدولي وللاستزادة بالمعلومات والمنتجات الخاصة بالفريق. شكرا للجميع ونلقاكم إن شاء الله في اجتماعات قادمة.
شكرا وإلى اللقاء.
Thank you to Tassima. Thank you, good Hannah. Let's wait maybe a minute because we still have a lot of participants who are still connected. So maybe we can wait a minute before we have an internal talk.